Welcome to Living a Healthy Life with Chronic Conditions. You're not alone. We're glad you're here. My name is Angie Hunt, Project Manager with the Work Wellness and Disability Prevention Institute, and I'll be moderating the webinar today. This webinar is made possible through the support of the Community Gaming Grant Program through the BC Government, as well as donations and memberships to WWDPI. We thank our program partners, Pain BC, Education Advisory Committee, and speakers who contribute to this webinar series. While we're waiting for others to join us, I'll go over a few technical points for the webinar. You should be able to hear the presentation through your computer speakers or through the conference call line if you dialed in. Please use the question box to submit any issues you may be experiencing and to ask any questions you have related to the presentation. We will collect questions submitted throughout the presentation and follow the presentation with a Q&A based on the questions submitted. Following the webinar, any questions not answered in the allotted time will be answered and distributed after the event. The presentation will be recorded and posted for free on our website within a week along with the slides. You'll be emailed the direct links for all these items when they are available. As I mentioned, my name is Angie and I'll be moderating the webinar and Q&A session. Our presenters today are Lana Berry and Sherry Lynch. Lana has been involved with the University of Victoria's self-management program since 2012. Through her personal experience of chronic pain due to an MVA, Lana encourages people living with chronic conditions to better their health and their lives through knowledge and skills obtained from self-management and the online program she coordinates. Her background experience is in education, life coaching, community engagement, and online curriculum development. Lana is passionate advocate about gathering community of support when dealing with chronic conditions and truly believes there is light in darkness. Sherry's background experience in psychology and social work. In 1989, her involvement in self-management programs began with the implementation of the Arthritis Self-Management Program in Canada. Prior to joining the University of Victoria in September 2003, Sherry worked for 14 years with nonprofit societies and healthcare agencies, specifically in the area of volunteer management and peer support. As a research associate, she is passionate about researching and sharing strategies to support people to live their healthiest life. And now I'll turn it over to Lana and Sherry.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Well, first of all, I would like to say thanks everyone for attending today. And Sherry also wanted to say something to me off the top.
Yes, I wanted to just congratulate Lana, who is back to work. She's actually an employee with us. She started as a person living with chronic conditions, and she'll tell you about her journey where she ended up being a staff person. But today is her 2-year anniversary of being back to work. So
Yay.
Congratulations, Lana.
Thank you so much. What a journey it has been, and I am ever so grateful to be here. So today, our webinar outline, as you can see, we're going to discuss my wellness journey, the common challenges of living with chronic conditions, what actually is self-management, what do people learn in our self-management programs, the programs that we offer here by Self-Management BC. We'd like to give you a few examples of some of the testimonials of participants that have taken our programs, and at the end we'll give you some more information on how to register for our workshops. So we'd like to start out by thank you so much, Angie, for your lovely introduction. As Angie has said, I'm the online coordinator here for the last 2 years. Before that, I was a participant. I started out as a participant in 2012. I became a volunteer leader, and then I was a diabetes health coach. If you're wondering where my accent comes from, as some people may, I'm originally from Newfoundland. And as Angie has said, my background is in education, online curriculum development. I am definitely a self-manager now, and I'm a self-advocate for that. And I do have one more thing to note. I have a mantra, and I was just sharing it with Sherry this morning. You knock me down, but I get back up, and I get myself back in the race again.
Thanks, Lana. And I'm really glad that Lana's here today because she brings her perspective as someone living with chronic conditions. And I think that's really important. That's really an integral part of what we do at Self-Management BC. We're very patient-centered, as they say. Just briefly about my background, I've been involved with self-management since they brought the first self-management program, as Angie had said, way back in 1989. I think the first training was in 1987, and that's like 30 years ago. So now I'm feeling old. But I've been involved with
looking young.
Oh, thank you. But I've been involved in it. I'm very passionate about it. We've been running these programs for a number of years. They were developed at Stanford University. They're evidence-based programs. They're not the answer for everyone, but certainly I think we've got something that we can offer people that can be very beneficial. And I can say that in the 30 years that I've been involved with this program, every time I do a training or a workshop, I always learn something new.
Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, well, we're going to jump into start with the beginning of my journey with chronic conditions, and of course, leading me to here today as an active self-manager and gainfully employed. So back in 2012, it started when I was involved in a motor vehicle accident. I got hit by another vehicle. And in the beginning, I didn't think it was too serious. I had the usual upper back pain, lower back pain, and I was having a lot of difficulty in the abdomen area where they found out that I had a pelvic floor tear. It was only some time after that I was having extreme neurological pain. And when I went back to my my general practitioner, he sent me to a gynecologist, and they did testing for me, and that doctor told me that it was all in my head and I should go home and have a glass of wine. This is when I experienced my first breakdown. I then went on to have a great deal of stress and anxiety, and then of course my motivation, my desire, my will to live literally was taken away from me from a short period of time. When I did get back to my general practitioner, he decided that because I was under such duress, he sent me to see a psychiatrist because he thought that it must be all in my head. When I did see her, finally I was able to cry and share my story with her. She sent me on to another gynecologist. Between that period of time, I was able to communicate my thoughts as a psychiatrist and let her know that I was having neurological problems. When I finally did my research and got to the second gynecologist, I told her what it was that I was asking for, and she was able to I was actually able to ask her for a specific test for her to do for me called a Q-tip test, and then I was able to get a diagnosis of a rare neurological disorder called provoked vestibular dynia. From during this period of time, what helped me get back on my feet again was the self-management programs, because number one, it was able to get me, at the time, I was able to go online and to look at the self-management tools. In addition to that, when I was ready, I was able to go out into the community so that I could meet with other folk who had chronic conditions so that I could get support from them. And what support did I get? Just to know that I was not alone, just to be able to get a hug from someone to let me know that there was hope at the end, that there was light in the middle of my darkness, gave me the strength and courage to continue forward.
Okay, so in our workshop, what we're going to do is we're just going to share with you a few of the things that we discuss in our workshops, just to give you a sense of sort of the nature of these self-management programs. And one of the things that we promote in our program is looking at chronic conditions as a path. Mm-hmm. It's like a journey, and then in your path, sometimes the path is going to go up, sometimes it's going to go down. You get some smooth spots, then you end up with rough spots. Sometimes you have to make mid-course corrections. So we try to emphasize to people that if you do hit a down part, that it's not a pit to crawl out of, but rather it's a natural part of the path. It's a process.
Absolutely.
So that's sort of the way that we look at living with chronic conditions.
Absolutely. It's up and down, up and down. I like to say sometimes you're 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but you're always headed in the right direction. You need to believe in yourself and never, never, never give up. Some of the common challenges when living with chronic conditions, and as you look down through the list, you may find that you may have some or all at certain periods of your journey. Daily management of the conditions. I can use a very quick example for myself. With my neurological condition, when I wake up, I usually have a lot of pain. So what I usually do is say a very quick mantra, so that I can divert my attention from my pain. And I was sharing it with Sherry this morning. I always say thank you for all I have and all I can give. I ask that only good come to me and good go through me so that I can start the day in a very kind and loving way. Another common challenge with living with chronic conditions, of course, are all these mixed together: depression, anger, frustration, and fear. As I mentioned earlier, when I went to see a doctor and I had no hope at all, I became very, very, very depressed. And I started to have anger issues right away. I was very frustrated and extremely fearful of what was going to happen to me, especially in the future. Physical limitations, of course, where I was sometimes not able to bend over and touch my toes, or I sometimes was not able to put on my shoes. So I immediately had to begin to accept myself as I was in that moment, as opposed to what I wanted myself to be. Of course, isolation. We sometimes isolate ourselves because, of course, at my time, I did not want to answer any of the difficult questions that came toward me. So I found it was better just to have time to myself. Poor sleep, of course, due to pain and due to worry and due to the frustration and anger. And again, like we said before, what's going to happen to me in the future? And you don't have to do a lot of exercise to feel fatigue when you're dealing with chronic conditions. Sometimes just waking up in the morning is all you need to do, is to feel tired, overwhelmed. And as I mentioned earlier, from the depression and anger, sometimes life seems to be unpredictable. And again, with the self-management programs, I can't stress enough how we are given the tools to become self-managers and advocates for our own health. As I mentioned before, we worry about work, finances, and of course the future. And from one of the stories that I mentioned before, when you get insufficient support from the healthcare system, you can sometimes feel very depleted, very hopeless, and no direction. But we're here to tell you that that is not true, that there is direction for you.
Okay. So really, when it comes to living with a chronic health condition, the person living with the condition is the biggest healthcare provider. On average, people see their healthcare providers, including, physiotherapists, family doctors, specialists, about 12 hours a year. And so you're left to manage your condition the other 364 and a half days. And the good news is you don't have to wait around for your healthcare providers. You want to work with your healthcare providers, but you also want to gain skills and confidence. And your outcomes will depend on your actions. And the message here is that you are not alone. And here at Self-Management BC, we have a team of over 600 volunteers across the province, the majority living with chronic health conditions themselves, that are all willing to support the public and living with chronic conditions. And Lana, how is that meeting other people and having that support from other people?
As I touched on this briefly before, just walking in a room, knowing that you're not alone. For so long for myself, I had isolated myself within my mind and also physically around other people, that finally when I walked through the doors of self-management and I was able to sit with other people that were going through difficult situations, it may not necessarily be the same chronic condition as myself, but it was the same journey of building on one success at a time, small steps at a time. As what I was told in the workshop, this is a process. It's not a quick fix, but if you stick with it and you continue to believe in yourself one step at a time, you will reach your goals and objectives.
Okay, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about what is self-management. And if you go into the literature, there are many definitions for self-management. Some people just see it as I monitor my blood glucose. That's self-management. But at Self-Management BC, our definition that we use is the tasks that individuals must undertake on a daily basis to live well with one or more chronic conditions. And these tasks include gaining confidence, and that's a really key word. You'll be hearing it more throughout the rest of this, because our programs are based on self-efficacy theory, self-efficacy being another name for confidence. So having confidence to deal with your condition, the medical management of your condition, And also to continue with as normal a routine as possible, right, which is going to require some changes. You may need to make changes, and also to deal with the emotions. So the really important thing here is that we know that confident people in managing their condition have better outcomes. So how you manage makes all the difference in your quality of life.
Absolutely, and nobody's as for myself. I had very little or no confidence when I first walked into my program at Self-Management for Chronic Conditions. But day after day, week after week, I built on that confidence to what I am today.
So self-management means you assume responsibility for yourself by taking various actions to control or decrease your symptoms. And some examples include the following.
Keeping informed about your status, asking questions, as we mentioned before, about being proactive. Taking part in planning your treatment program, telling the healthcare team about your preferences and your goals. Informing your healthcare team about problems and changes you experience. Giving new activities at least a 2-week trial. We have found in our research that this is the most successful, and in this way, before deciding what will work best for you. And last, setting goals and working towards them. And during this time, I would like to say, please be kind and gentle with yourself. As we said before, you will sometimes have some bumps in the road, but that's just to teach you how to get better as you go along.
And I just want to mention too that having that positive, proactive attitude, it's not going to cure a chronic condition, but having that positive attitude and skills and confidence can make it a lot easier to live with a chronic condition.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we're just going to show you one of the things that we explain in the workshop is what is the nature of a chronic condition and how do the symptoms work. So this symptom cycle, for some people, it can be a real aha moment because a lot of times we just think that the condition itself is what's causing symptoms. Now, while the disease can certainly cause pain and shortness of breath and fatigue, it's not the only cause. Each of these symptoms in the cycle can contribute to the other symptoms, and it's not one direction or the other. This can skip across. They can feed on each other, these symptoms. For example, depression causes fatigue, right? And pain can cause physical limitations, and that can lead to poor sleep, and then that can increase fatigue. So you can see we call it, they've used the term the vicious cycle, right? It's a very negative cycle. And until we can find a way to break the cycle. So, for example, Lana, what has your been experience with that symptom cycle?
Thank you, Sherry. Firstly, I'll look at the physical limitations where, as I mentioned before, I would wake up in the middle of the night with pain. Then I would then not be able to get back to sleep. Then when I would finally get a little sleep and wake up, I was definitely fatigued. Then when I would wake up, I would feel very depressed. I would start to have shortness of breath. I would breathe very quickly, and I would have stress and anxiety. And then again, my emotions would kick, oh no, what's happening to me? What's going to happen to me in the future? It was through some of the self-management tools, and I'll just mention a couple of them here. One of them was relaxation technique and the mind-body connection. The other one was my positive self-talk, that instead of when I would look at being worried for the future, I would take some very deep breaths and I would say things will be okay. Maybe I didn't believe it in the moment when I was saying it, but over time, it was the process that led me to believe that, yes, I can do it and I can become a better version of myself, even through the symptom cycle.
Great. So we're going to give you some examples of the tools that we talk about in our program. And as Lana said, relaxation is one of those tools of using your mind to manage your symptoms. Because what we want to do here is we want to break that cycle. Now, the cycle repairs itself, so you do have to go back again and again with these tools. And what works for one person may not necessarily work for the next person. So it is a bit of trial and error, finding out what works for you. Mm-hmm. Some people, meditation is very difficult for them, but another, maybe the body scan will work better for them. So again, finding out what works for you. So one of the first tools that we talk about is using your mind to break the symptom cycle. And as Lana had said, there is a mind-body connection. We know the way that we think, or our mind, affects our body. We know that emotions can affect our symptoms. And using your mind, the different techniques are breathing techniques, visualization, distraction, positive thinking, as Lana had mentioned, the positive self-talk.
Absolutely.
And guided imagery. Those are some tools and examples of using your mind to manage your symptoms. Now, we do tell people in our program that you want to give a tool a fair trial, so at least 2 weeks minimum, to see if it's going to work for you, because sometimes these things take practice. And it's also important to try more than one tool, because some tools may be more useful for certain symptoms, or you may find you prefer some techniques over others. Everyone is different. Now, we're just going to do a little exercise here, our lemon exercise, and this is to show you the power of the mind. So I'm just going to read a script here. So I'm just going to ask you, wherever you are, just to close your eyes, have a deep breath. That's good. And I want you to imagine that you're holding a big, bright yellow slice of lemon. Picture it in your mind. You can feel the texture of the lemon rind in your hand. Now, take that lemon and lift it to your nose. You can smell its strong citrus aroma. Next, bring that lemon slice to your mouth and take a big bite out of the lemon. It's juicy, and the juice squirts all through your mouth. And you can taste the tart lemon juice filling your mouth, and the juice is dribbling down your chin. It's very juicy. Now suck the juice from that lemon. Okay. So now open your eyes, and of course we can't ask you, but I'm going to ask Lana, what happened when you were imagining that lemon juice in your mouth?
My mouth salivated.
Salivated, yes. And there's no lemon present, just to let you know at this end of our webinar, there is no lemon. But the reason we do this exercise is to show people how the mind can affect the body with very little effort. There's no lemon present. You imagine a lemon, and you actually get a physical reaction to that imagination. So what that shows us is if we could do that so easily, just imagine what we could do if we learned ways to use that power to help us with symptoms such as pain, right? And it gives us a good reason to work to develop our mental abilities to help us manage our symptoms. And the thing is, with practice, you can use the mind to relax the body and use it to reduce stress and anxiety. So that's just one example of a tool.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to jump in and say, sometimes when I'm in the middle of the street and if I have some thoughts or if something's happening and I feel a little excitable, as I say, I take some very deep breaths in. Just take a second, deep breaths out, and already in that moment, I feel less stress.
Okay, so now Lana's going to speak about parts of an action plan.
Great, my favorite tool of the workshop. Okay, so parts of an action plan. The first thing is something that you want to do. It has to be achievable, so you can expect to accomplish this in the week. Action specific, for example, having one piece of fruit after dinner is more specific than having fruits after meals. We want you to answer the following questions. What, the specific action, how much, time, distance, amount, when you will do it, the time of day or which days of the week, and how often you will do it, the number of days in the week. And then we would like you to check in with yourself and find out what is your confidence level. And we would like it to be 7 or more, where 0 would be being unsure and 10 being totally sure.
Yeah. Now, as Lana had said, action plans are one of the most important self-management tools. And what it does, it allows us to achieve what we want to achieve or decide to do by breaking it down into smaller, more doable steps and tasks. Because goals are generally too big to work on. And as you saw it previously, you're dealing with a lot of things when you live with a chronic health condition. we've all got our roles to do, you know, a parent, a brother, a sister, our role as an employee or not an employee, whatever your situation is. But if you add on that extra layer of living with a chronic health condition, now you have appointments. Now you have, it's even more important that you're exercising. You may have changes in the way you eat. Let's face it, there's a lot of work that has to be done. That can be overwhelming. You know, you've heard the term sick and tired of being sick and tired, because it is. It's a lot of effort. So what the action plan does is it allows you to look at what is the goal you want to achieve, and let's break it down into smaller, more doable steps. It's not as overwhelming. Okay. Now, I'm going to give you some examples of action plans, and Lana's also going to do that. But we in our workshops, we ask people to be specific and answer those questions. We even encourage people to write it down, because the more specific you are, and if you also write it down, the more likely you are to achieve it. And the bottom line here is we want people to achieve success, because when people are successful, their confidence goes up. And again, as we know, the higher level of confidence, the better outcomes. So an example of an action plan, and again, it has to be something the person wants to do. What we've found in the research is most people will choose something to do with healthy eating or exercise, but they can do anything they want. Here's an example. This week, I will walk around the block for 30 minutes on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday before lunch, and my confidence level is an 8. And again, we ask for that confidence level to be 7 or more, because if someone says, well, my confidence level is a 5, well, that's like flipping a coin. The bottom line here is we want people to get to achieve and be successful so that their confidence is increased. Another example is this week I will drink a glass of water before breakfast on Tuesday, Friday, and Saturday, and my confidence level is 9. Or this week I will practice a guided imagery exercise on Wednesday before bed, and my confidence level is 7. So in the workshop, we actually do action plans every session. And this allows people to practice. It's called skills mastery. If there isn't success, we'll talk about what happens if they're not successful, but we really try to encourage people to choose something that they will be successful doing. And for people who feel that their life is very out of control, they're feeling very overwhelmed, having one small success can be a real boost. And these plans can range from, I'm going to walk to the end of my driveway. It's all based on your own, where you're at that moment.
That's all you can do.
And the nice thing about our programs is the facilitators of our programs also make action plans in the workshop. So everybody's on a level playing field, and they're in it together. And that's the peer part that I think has a really big impact in our program.
Absolutely. And what I found for myself is each week I was building on my success one week after the next. And then when my workshop finished 6 weeks later, like, oh my goodness, just look at me, just look what I did. And up to that point, I really have to say I didn't love myself very much, and I didn't believe that I could do it. And when I did do it, I was overwhelmed with joy, and I was able to build on that success to reach the success that I have right now.
Excellent. Okay, so that's one tool. It's a really key component of self-management, is doing these small, doable, some people call them short-term goals, but always looking towards the bigger goal, but breaking it down into those doable steps. Now, another tool that's very common sense, but very practical and very useful is problem solving. And this will come in, let's say someone sets an action plan, but they run into problems, or someone's just having a problem in the management of their chronic condition. Problem solving is a really common sense way of dealing with something. And again, it does empower people to say, okay, I've got this problem. What are some things I can do about the problem? So the first step in the problem solving process is identifying the problem. This is the first and most important step, but it's also the most difficult step. For example, you know, someone might feel that poor performance at work is the problem, when the real problem is the fatigue is affecting the person's ability to concentrate at work. So you really have to hone the problem, really hone it. The second thing you do is you list ideas to solve the problem. So you come up, it's a brainstorm, and you come up and you just list as many ideas as you can come up with to solve the problem. And then, very common sense, you select one idea to try, and then you assess the results. Was your problem solved? Great. If it wasn't solved, then you go back to your list and you substitute another idea. You can also consult other people and utilize other resources. For example, talk to your healthcare team, see if there's a community resource that might be available to assist you. And number 7, and I think because this is the way life is sometimes you have to accept that the problem may not be solvable now, but that's okay. It doesn't mean it won't ever be solvable, but it may be something you're going to need to revisit, let's say in 6 months' time. Things may change. Okay.
Okay, so let me give you an example of what that would look like. So the problem, I can't go shopping. Solutions through the brainstorming session: get daughter to shop for me, find a volunteer shopping service, ask a neighbor to shop for me, use the internet, get home delivered meals. So you would pick a solution that seems most workable from the list. You try it, assess the results, and if it didn't work, you return to the list and try another one. And then you would go through the list to find your best solution. And as we said before, if none of these work, then you may want to come up with other solutions, or you may decide that this may not be solvable right now. I would just like to share with you one of my own personal problem-solving issues, and that was communicating with my doctor. Because of the sensitive nature of my neurological disorder, I had a very difficult time communicating with my doctor, and because of my nervousness and my panic and stress, I literally went in and sat down in the office and I drew a blank. I couldn't think, I couldn't speak, so I just listened to him. I said a few things. I got prescriptions of painkillers and mind numbers, I like to call them, and I went away. When I did come to self-management, they helped me with my problem-solving issue, and I was able to come up with some solutions like make a list, write a letter, use iMessages, bring someone to the doctor's office with me. In the end, writing a list of 3 items down on my paper, going in, reading each list slowly, then repeating what the doctor said back to me to make sure I understood was very, very useful. And when I left the doctor's office, dare I say it, I almost felt empowered that I was in control for once in my life. So that's how problem solving, just this one issue, helped me in gaining back my confidence in dealing with the healthcare professionals. Okay, moving into dealing with difficult emotions, which is something that I can say I do on a daily basis. So dealing with difficult emotions, you need to understand the causes of such emotions. Some ways to deal with difficult emotions would be to write your feelings down, which is something that I do quite regularly. Think about positive things in your life. I have integrated something called positive self-talk in my life now, so that when I say things that I used to believe about myself that are no longer true, I will jump in and take those negative words out and add positive words. I write a gratitude journal when I wake up every morning. I write down 3 things that I'm grateful for, as I said, including my mantra, so that I start out every day in a kind and loving way. Dealing with difficult emotions, physical activities, pretty much anything that you do in the physical realm can help you. For me, where I was not wanting to leave the house and isolated, I was very grateful that I have a little dog, and he actually forced me to wash my face and go for a walk 3 times a day when I was in a very depressed state. And do something nice for yourself. Please do something nice for yourself every day, whether it be to say just something wonderful, like sometimes you may decide that you would like to watch your favorite TV show or take a bath or just maybe do some yoga or meditate. Anything that works for you. Just be kind and loving to yourself. As I mentioned before, dealing with difficult emotions is not easy, and it is a minute-by-minute case that from one moment to the next, you need to have your toolkit ready.
And I'm just going to add too that in my experience, I often find that the difficult emotions are sometimes the most challenging part of living with a chronic health condition. It's not the physical, it's the emotional part.
Absolutely.
So as you see, we've gone through some of the tools in the toolbox, and this is the analogy we use, is that you're living with a chronic health condition, you're dealing with that symptom cycle, but the good news is we've got a number of tools that we can use that we can learn to use, that we can practice, and that can become integrated into our day-to-day. So we've covered today, we talked about action planning, a really powerful tool, problem solving, very common sense, but very, very useful. How you can use your mind to break that symptom cycle, and also understanding emotions, which can have a big impact. And you can see here that we have other tools that we talk about in the workshop. And what we do is we get people to try them out, see how they work for them, and set an action plan for maybe trying out a tool. So yes, it's a very experiential. Okay. So now we're going to speak to the programs that we offer. The in-person group programs, those are the majority of what we offer. Now, these programs were developed at Stanford University back in the early 80s. And the first program was for people with arthritis. And the woman that developed it, her name is Kate Lorig. And as part of her PhD, she went to people living with arthritis and said, what do you need? What would help you? She also paired up with the Canadian psychologist who was at Stanford, Albert Bandura. So together, they came up with this self-management program, and it's based on self-efficacy theory. Currently, the program is offered in 26 countries around the world. It's a national program in the United States. It's been implemented through the National Council on Aging. It's considered an evidence-based program, and that's why the National Council supports it. In British Columbia, we've actually just in the last couple of months have gone over the 35,000 participant mark. So that's a lot of people. So I think that speaks to the benefits that people are getting from this program. One thing we wanted to touch on was, because our talk is about you're not alone, our programs, the unique thing that our programs bring to people living with chronic health conditions is the peer component. And we know peers can bring something very unique to the table that health professionals won't bring, and that's their lived experience. And what happens with peers is that peers can share and identify common experiences. Your feelings are validated. When Lana met someone else that had the same condition, she said she wanted to cry because it was nice to meet someone who really
did cry,
fully understand what you're going through. Again, that social isolation that you spoke to, Lana, right? You meet with people in the community. These are community-based programs at your community centers. We try to get free space where we offer them. It gives people a sense of optimism and hope because they can see other people who are managing well. They think, hey, you know what? If Lana can do it, I can do it too.
Absolutely.
It also normalizes experiences. Sometimes people think, wow, I'm really having a hard time with this. Well, other people are experiencing the same thing, but you're not alone and you get the support of other people. So our programs, our group programs, we offer 4 different programs. Chronic pain, which is our most popular program, diabetes, chronic conditions, which is a more generic program for anybody living with any type of chronic health condition. Sometimes we find people have 1, 2, 3 chronic conditions. And then also the cancer thriving and surviving. And this is for people who have completed their treatment for cancer. So it's post-treatment. As far as how the program works, it's in the community. People attend for once a week for 6 weeks for 2.5 hours. And the eligibility criteria is you have to have 1 or more chronic health conditions, an interest in better managing chronic conditions, but also, as you see on the bottom here, you can bring your spouse, your caregiver is also encouraged to attend, friends, family. And what I would actually like to say, I've been involved in these programs so long, even if you don't have chronic health conditions, this program would benefit you. Because it's about living a healthy life.
That's right.
Being the best you can be and making changes and how do you make them and supporting people and feeling confident that you can manage your health.
Believing in yourself.
Exactly. The referral process, it's self-referral. So anyone can just phone us up or go online and register, and it's free. And you get a really nice textbook, which we'll show you. And this is an overview of the workshop. So these are the topics that we cover in the workshop. As you can see, if you see making an action plan, it's really a core skill that we work on for people week to week. And it's really the process. I really want to, a lot of times people say, oh, I go to the workshop for information. Without a doubt, you need that basic information. You need to know what you're living with, right? But it's in our workshops, it's really the skill development. So if there's a key word that I would like you to leave with today, this workshop is about developing skills and confidence to manage your chronic health condition. And the processes we use in the workshop, like making action plans, having people share their experiences, having modeling, you know, from the, because I forgot to mention that it is led by 2 peers who have chronic conditions themselves or have an interest in chronic conditions and live with someone with chronic conditions. So that's really key. And I think, did you want to comment on anything?
Yeah. That's right, and then I'll just jump into the online program. So this workshop overview is the exact same for the online program, except that, of course, you're taking the online program online. So here we are. So the overview of the online chronic conditions, again, the commitment is 6 weeks, but the difference here is that it's self-paced with a 24/7 online accessibility. So new sessions are posted each Monday morning for 6 weeks. You communicate through the postings to others. You also write your action plan online and folk comment on that, as well as 2 facilitator peer leaders in the community. As well, we have a mentor that also oversees the entire workshop. And I always say, just to be sure that everybody's being kind and loving, which everyone is, of course. The other part of the online workshop that's really exciting that we quite love is we have something called a celebration board. So each week when people have small successes, they're able to share them with one another and to build on those from week to week. We have resources and toolkit there, so you can do your online journal, your health log, and many other fun stuff. It's easy to follow, of course. We just talked about the community. You're very, very supported from the online community. Participants remained anonymous. There's roughly 20 to 25 participants in there. And the fun part of this is after you take the online workshop, as your coordinator, I will send you an email after the workshop to invite you to join the alumni, which comes out of San Francisco, and it's for your lifelong learning and support. So you're never, ever, ever alone. We always have other fun things for you to do.
Yeah, and we like to say we offer a menu of programs.
Yes.
Because some people are not able to attend in person. Some people would prefer anonymity. Some people, you know, have different hours, or because of the fluctuating nature of their chronic condition, they may not be able to make it every Monday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
That's right.
So we try to provide flexibility to people to meet them where they're at.
That's right, their readiness level, I like to call it.
Yeah, and just as far as the program, two important things is both of the programs as evidence-based programs, they're copywritten programs, and there's fidelity guidelines. So that if you took this program here, you would get the same program in the United States as you would if you took it in England. And the volunteers follow a scripted manual, and they have to, you know, maintain the integrity of the program by doing that, because we can only get the evidence base if we deliver the program in the way in which it was designed. So that's one thing, just to let you know. And as far as the outcomes, the self-management programs have been evaluated extensively, and some of the outcomes I'll share with you is that people who took the program, when compared to people who didn't, they demonstrated improvements in exercise, cognitive symptom management, communication with physicians, as Lana had mentioned. Self-reported general health was improved. Their health distress was less. Fatigue and disability were less. And their limitations as far as their social and role activities was less. And also, as far as the economic impact, people spent fewer days in hospital, and there was a trend towards fewer outpatient visits, and those are those outcomes. And then as far as the qualitative outcomes, you know, they did say that people felt that they were heard in the program. They appreciated that they know they're not alone.
That's right.
They're sharing with others who understand. And it's a comfortable environment. There's no judgment.
None.
Because people are all living with chronic conditions.
That's right. They're there for each other. We're immediately there for one another.
And at the beginning of the workshop, we provide guidelines to reinforce that we want a safe and comfortable, non-judgmental environment. And also in the qualitative outcomes, that people, by the end of the program, you know, felt confident that they could manage their conditions and realized that they did need to take some action and take that role. Okay, so the next program, the third program that we offer is the Health Coach Program. And originally it started when we did a study that was funded by the Lawson Foundation, and we looked at just type 2 diabetes and people living in Fraser Health. And so what we did in the Health Coach Program, originally we wanted to compare people who had a coach to people who didn't have a coach, but ethically we had problems because people, when they were told about the study, people didn't feel good about having the chance of not having a coach. So we had to change the study design. But in that study, we found that people's A1C was statistically significantly reduced. People had increased activation. We have a patient activation measure we use called the PAM, and people were more activated, which means they were more able to manage their conditions. We had increase in diabetes empowerment, increase in diabetes self-efficacy or their confidence, right, to manage the condition, reduction in depression,
Excellent.
and better, again, communication with physicians. And so when that program was successful, the study, we actually started a program called the Health Coach Program for people living with any type of chronic health condition, so not just diabetes. So people can be matched. It's matched on gender, and they meet once, they don't meet, sorry, they get a phone call once a week. They meet by phone for 30 minutes for usually 3 months, but they can ask for an extension to 6 months. And the criteria, again, is you just have to have one chronic condition. And then we ask people to think about what is a health goal that you would like to achieve. And then the coach supports them to make that health goal. And the pairing criteria, as I said, we try to base it definitely gender, men to men, women to women, age group. If they have a similar chronic health condition, we'll try to match them that way. And our coaches have a chronic condition or are interested in supporting individuals living with such conditions. We get a lot of volunteers whose family members have a chronic condition, so they're very familiar with chronic conditions, and they want to support people living with chronic conditions.
Excellent.
So,
excellent. So we have many, many, many options.
And these programs are not meant to replace the medical treatment. These are meant to augment. And we actually help people living with chronic conditions to be more active and better able to communicate with their healthcare team. So we're actually making them proactive, prepared patients.
Absolutely, absolutely. So very quickly, just to sum up a little bit here, how have I benefited from the self-management program? Well, number one, I now believe in myself. I started out this program I went in and I believed in my self-management program that I was broken, that I was no longer lovable, and that I was never ever going to be able to be who I am today. And so what I want to say to that is never give up. Believe in yourself. It's step-by-step process. Some of the steps will be small, some will be bigger, and it's different for everyone. Just never give up. And I'll just go down through quickly. I improved the understanding of living with my conditions, as I have given you examples throughout, through my positive talk meditation, my action plan process, the visualizations that I use, and of course my problem solving. So I am now an active self-manager. I have obviously improved self-efficacy, and I have now new behavior changes, like I write in my gratitude journal every morning. From one of my very first action plans of drinking a glass of water in the morning before breakfast, I now do that every day of my life. I exercise some days, not as much as other days, but I do because I have my little dog. I always manage to get exercise in every day, and I meditate faithfully because I find that sometimes it's just great to just let everything go. And that, all within one holistic approach, enabled me to return to work 2 years ago today.
So we just thought we'd throw in a couple testimonials to wrap it up here. So someone from the Chronic Conditions Program said it's one of the best things that came out of the program was the belonging I felt with my classmates. Hearing their struggles helped me to see that I wasn't alone. Again, that you're not alone theme.
Chronic Pain Program. The course provided me with tools to work through my pain management and made me more aware of how to deal with the pain. I particularly like the activity of setting goals for the following week and then being responsible for reporting if they were completed. Being responsible to and for ourselves is very, very empowering.
In the online program, Each session is presented in a simple, clear, step-by-step format, which is good for the people who are technologically challenged, and it can be augmented by reading the manual. This makes it easier for the information to sink in and make sense to my situation. And there's an opportunity to connect with others. Again, this is huge.
This is huge. And finally, the health coach program. My coach managed to say something each week that resonated with me in my weight loss journey and helped me navigate my eating the following week. I even came back from a vacation with a slight weight loss rather than a gain. Woohoo!
And these are our program materials. So when you sign up for the health coach program, the in-person 6-week group self-management program, or the online program, you'll receive one of either the Living a Healthy Life with Chronic Conditions, or if you're living with chronic pain, you'll get the Living a Healthy Life with Chronic Pain book.
And of course, again, that's free and it is sent to your door. And our take-home message: you can learn to become an active self-manager of your own chronic conditions. Self-Management BC offers various free programs to help you develop your skills. Can't stress enough the power of peer support and feeling empowered and hopeful for the future.
And there are the ways to register for our programs. You can phone that number. You can email us. You can go on the website and actually register yourself.
Absolutely. And you can do the same thing online at www.selfmanage.org/onlinebc. And of course, if you have any questions about any of our programs, just give us a call.
And we'd like to acknowledge that we're supported by the province of British Columbia.
And again, we would like to repeat, you are not alone in dealing with your daily challenges of chronic conditions, and we're here to help you. And thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for the presentation. To our audience at this time, if you have any questions, please enter them into the question and answer panel, and we'll answer them out loud here. Some of the questions that came in, do you know if this program is offered in person in Toronto?
Yes. Yes, it is.
On our website, if you go to self-management programs, we actually have a link. If you go scroll down on the left-hand side, it says self-management programs in other parts of Canada. And in Ontario, it's part of their LINS, which is their local health integrated networks, the LINS. So I know in Toronto, I believe it's the Central East LINS, but if you go online, it is in Toronto.
Okay, and we'll also include that information in our follow-up materials to the audience too, so you should be receiving that in a follow-up email, all those links. Is the program available in New Jersey County area?
Oh, yes. It's available in the United States through the National Council on Aging and actually some of the HMOs in the United States. We'll give you the website where you can find out where it's available in the United States.
Well, there seem to be a lot of questions coming in, so could we scroll back to the the slide with the information, and maybe we'll leave that up there while we ask some other questions?
Sure. How do we go backwards? Oh my.
Another question for Lana. What are some of the tools that you have found to be helpful to maintain your ability to be at work?
Good question. Thank you. The number one is to deal with who I am in the moment. Like, for example, my neurological damage, sometimes I have to be aware of what type of clothes I wear to work, that they need to be loose fitting. Some other parts of being back to work is like when I have lower back pain and upper back pain. So when I'm sitting in pain, I actually stand up. It sounds something very simple, but sometimes we sit through pain. This was something I learned through self-management. As well, I have a special type of chair and cushion for me to be able to sit on to be comfortable at work. So these are just some of the things that I have changed to be able to get to work. And of course, because of my upper body damage, I will call it, I do even set a timer for myself that every 30 minutes I have to get up and walk around so that I don't have more pain.
Right, how do you deal with people who think you should be fine? to look all right, I have chronic fatigue.
Do you want to answer that one, Lana? For when you look fine.
Oh,
that's a common
yeah,
theme.
that's, well, yes, that is actually something that that in the very beginning, because of course, if you look at me, I look quite normal, that all my injuries are internal. I mean, so would you mind repeating that question again?
Oh, yeah, sure. How do you deal with people who think you should be fine since you look all right and you have chronic fatigue?
That's right. Well, I've adapted a new saying over the process of my journey here, and what other people think of me is not necessarily what is. So when some people have said to me, "You look fine," I would say, "Well, thank you so much for that." But unfortunately, you know, I do have chronic conditions that you're not able to see.
It's certainly a challenge because, especially when I worked at the Arthritis Center, you know, people do not understand that level of fatigue. It's that drop down, I could sleep on the floor at this very moment fatigue. And I think it comes to education too, because people just don't know that much until they are diagnosed themselves with a chronic condition. So I think maybe as a person living with chronic conditions, we need to speak to others.
Absolutely.
And use iMessages but definitely it's an opportunity, I think, for education.
That's a fact. That's an absolute fact. Thank you, Sherry. That's exactly what I was going to say. When people do say that to me, I do make that a learning moment where I can let other people know, actually, no, that's not the case, and this is what I'm feeling, and this is why. So I actually have, instead of saying, oh, well, you know what, they're judging me, I'm going to walk away, I now have changed to what Sherry just said, and I take it as a moment to educate others that, no, that is not the case, and this is really how I'm feeling, regardless of what others may or may not think of me. Thank you for that question.
Mm-hmm. What recommendations could you make for a clinician, physician, or nurse practitioner in how they can support patients dealing with chronic pain? Is it possible for those in the health professional industry to get a copy of the manual?
Good point. Do you want me to speak to that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's a copywritten course. So unfortunately, they just don't really hand it out. But I guess I would say to someone, you know, maybe learn about the program itself so that you can feel that you're knowledgeable referring someone to it, because we know that your confidence in referring a patient is key. And actually, our number one source of referral for our programs, the number one source is health professionals. So we really like to make sure that they know that it's a standardized, evidence-based program that follows fidelity guidelines. And I think it augments what healthcare professionals do. So we give people skills so they can better work with the clinician. And as far as what the clinician can do for people living with chronic pain, probably, I guess, is just meet the person where they're at. And probably really the listening part is key. Mm-hmm. Because I think you can't underestimate the emotional impact. And a lot of times what we find in our experience is when people come to our workshops, if they don't have that emotional support, they are not managing well. And the people that manage well usually have that support and the confidence. So that's where we can come in. And also in these workshops, you know, people meet people and they forge social networks. We have workshops where people continue to meet for coffee. And another thing we do in our workshops too is also direct people to other community resources. Mm-hmm. Because we want to skill them up so that they can go out there and they've got all these tools that they can use.
And they always give back to the community.
Exactly. And then people can also become involved. A lot of our leaders are past participants. So they can personally grow, mm-hmm. and they can also take their chronic condition and use it to help other people.
That's right. So for those folks that, as you were just talking about the textbook, they're actually able to take the programs themselves, and the online program will be a really good way for them to learn about that program. So they can certainly get in touch with me. We can discuss what their goals are, for example, that they want to then refer their patients to us, and then of course they will receive the book, and then I will discuss with them. Yes. And thank you, Sherry. One more thing to add.
Sorry, one more thing to add. Our program director actually does training for health professionals. on how to do self-management support. So he actually goes through the different health regions, and if someone is interested, we could connect them to our program director, and he actually does a workshop for free on how to integrate self-management support into your practice. So going into things like setting the agenda, making action plans, and those kinds of things. So that is also one of the things that we do.
Excellent, thanks.
That's wonderful. I think that is all the questions for now. Lana and Sherry, is there anything you'd like to add following your presentation?
Yes, I would just say I have one quick statement here that I had prepared. I would like to read it out to you. In accepting my chronic conditions and adapting a self-management plan, I am now more confident in staying on my path. Even when I am not feeling my best, I have a good attitude because of my positive self-talk and hope for the future.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Lana and Sherry, for your presentation. Very informative for our audience. And to our
for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. And again, we just wanted to say that the longer version of my story is in the loop, and we will send you information regarding that so you can pass it out as well.
Absolutely. We'll include that for our audience.